long time no see. So, you guys may not know this, but I just graduated college, 2-year degree. I have an associate's degree. I'm trying to think of what that equates to internationally, but I have no idea. I didn't do so good in school, apparently. Either way, my fiance's 9-year-old cousin always loves to watch the intros and stuff to my videos. So she actually made me this picture, which I wanted to show you guys. And it just says, "Congratulations, Ryan," which of course is my real name. And then she wrote, "Hey guys, deep dive on Masquerade." And then she drew like a little camera, and of course it has Pikachu, Pokeball, and a little heart. How flippin' sweet is that? So, I know she's gonna watch this video, so if you guys wanna like say hey in the comments, I think that would be hilarious, but you know, I just have to find a place to put it. That'll work for now, but I'll find a more permanent place for it. I might move the Yoshis down and then put that up there. Either way, what is going on, guys? So today we're back with another deep dive, diving deeper into the Mirror Cup, and I seriously can't believe you guys voted for this Pokemon, but yeah, this is the top voted Pokemon at the moment, Camerupt. And if you're a longtime viewer, I did have a pretty strong campaign for Camerupt back in the Boulder Cup, and honestly, after doing this video, I don't feel necessarily like 100% great about it, but I'm still not upset that I had that opinion back then, and even now that Camerupt has had a little bit of change, I think it actually does a little bit better than what it did back then. So anyways, let's go ahead and start looking at Camerupt here. So Camerupt is a ground and fire type Pokemon, maxing out at 2193, which is actually not too bad of a CP for the Great League. Because we're actually going to get most of our stat product out of this Pokemon, I don't think that's actually that bad. Now with a 0-1 attack, 14 defense, and 13 stamina at level 26 though, you do hit that clean 1499, which is the best possible overall stat product inside the Great League there. Now, according to my spreadsheets and my numbers, in the general Great League, just freestyle, open everybody for themselves, 274th in bulk and 208th in stat product. Out of 545 participants, I mean, that's okay, that's not amazing, but stat product is at least on the top end of that. Bulk is kinda hitting around the middle somewhere, so. But of course, all of that does come from our base stats here with a 194 on attack, 136 defense, and a 172 on stamina. So, as we've said multiple times in the past, that's only half the story. We need to see these moves to see really how good we can be. And I think this is the better half, to be honest. Camerupt's moves are a little underwhelming, and they always have been. We did get a new addition with Earth Power, which is actually not that bad. The biggest problem, before Earth Power, the biggest problem was that our quickest move was Earthquake, and Earthquake is no joke. I mean, even if we use Ember at 3 energy per turn, it's still gonna take us well over 11 Embers. That's 11 turns, so that's 22 seconds off the top of my head before we can even fire off Earthquake. And even then, we're gonna have to wait for Ember to actually finish before we can hit Earthquake. So if you overtap, you know, you're just wasting time there. So that's a lot. That's a lot, and I hate that. So we recently talked about Torterra and how Torterra with Bite and Razor Leaf basically yields you pretty much only one charge move per Torterra. I mean, really, like after it faints out, obviously you're not gonna be able to do anything, but you really only have enough energy build the entire time that Torterra is alive, unless you're just in an extremely favorable position to only get off one charge attack. And that's kind of how it feels like with Camerupt here as well, and I think it reflects a lot in his numbers. So long story short, Ember is just going to be better than Rock Smash in every way. Better energy per turn, better damage per turn after stab. I mean, Ember is definitely the way to go. In the charge move area, so this one is kind of a little skewed, and it really honestly depends on which way you want to take your Camerupt, because there are a couple of ways that you can kind of mess with it. One thing to remember is that based on our typing, we do have some really, really bad super duper weaknesses here, okay? So in our moves, if you were able to get off Earth Power and Overheat, I think actually that would probably be the better of the two for my personal situation. I think that that's the one that I like the most. That's the one that's in the numbers today, by the way. But there is a case to be made for Solar Beam, because in a couple of the cups that we're going to talk about, the Mud Boys are a big thing. And if you can kind of play around the Mud Boys to begin with, and then hit them with a Solar Beam, possibly like late game or something like that, I could see that working out really well. The addition to Earth Power kind of does take away a lot of thunder from Earthquake, so you know, it's not nearly as good. I guess there are positions for it because it is kind of a more finishing move. It only takes 10 more energy to get a little bit more damage out of it. So if you are more after efficiency, if you are more after just raw damage output as a just finishing Pokemon, just something to hit hard when all shields are down, Earthquake may make a little bit more sense than Earth Power, but in all honesty, Earth Power to me is just a little bit better. No reason not to run it here. So like I said, the moveset that we're going to go with today is Ember, Overheat, and Earth Power. Completely okay if you want to run Solar Beam. Just remember that some of the matchups are going to be a little bit skewed here. So let's actually talk about where Camerupt is actually going to be able to be played in. So we are actually able to be featured in the Boulder Cup, the Tempest Cup, the Kingdom Cup, and Season 1 Regionals. So quite a few cups there, which means there's a lot of numbers to go over here. So let's actually start getting into the Boulder Cup here. So starting off in our 0 versus 0, we do start with a 25% win ratio here, winning up against Magneton, Melmetal, Torterra, and Jirachi. So most of those actually make a fair bit of sense. Magneton, Melmetal, and Jirachi all having that steel typing. Gonna have a big issue right out of the gate with Ember, and if we're using Earth Power, then that also makes sense. Torterra is also gonna have a slight issue with Ember as well, so those all make pretty good sense there. Next, moving into our 1 versus 0, we actually have a 75% win ratio this time, losing up against Swampert, Marshtomp, Whiscash, and Medicham. So no surprise there, all three of the Mud Boys doing pretty good damage to us. And then we also have Medicham, which was, you know, kind of the big boy in the Boulder Cup as is. And then we have our 0 versus 1, which is a 12.5% win ratio, winning up against Magneton and Melmetal. So when they have a shield up, of course, we're still going to be able to beat them. So those are kind of our main targets here, Magneton and Melmetal. Now, in the 1 versus 1, we actually have a 31.3% winning up against Magneton and Melmetal, of course, but we actually pick up Skarmory here, Bastiodon, and Lucario, which is kind of interesting. So the entire reason that I used to campaign for Camerupt back in the day is because Melmetal was really seen as the only out to Skarmory. And like I've told you in the past, I hate the one-trick pony aspect of freaking Melmetal. That seems like all he's good for in the Boulder Cup is to take out Skarmory. Now, if that's what your team needs, of course, that's, he's honestly the best option to go with at this point. I used to campaign and say that Camerupt was a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife compared directly to Melmetal there. He had Solar Beam. I used to say that, running Overheat and Solar Beam was probably the better moveset because you had outs. Not necessarily like in a 1 versus 1 situation, but you had outs if you were able to charge up Ember on another Pokemon and then, save your Overheat or your Solar Beam to kind of take out whatever the next opposing Pokemon is. If you could kind of do something like that, then I think it would still, to this day, actually be a decent option. The problem with it is that mentality makes it really slow, and that mentality puts you at a really disadvantageous position in more matchups than it does put you in advantageous ones. So it's still kind of a iffy strategy, and honestly in my Boulder Cup I still think I would have done better if I brought Camerupt that day, just because I didn't have a direct out to Melmetal, most likely. I can't remember exactly, but either way, Camerupt I felt at the time would definitely have helped in my situation, but that's neither here nor there at this point. So averaging up all 4 of those shield situations, we do have a 35.95%. So keep that, and we'll come back to that. Next, moving on to the Tempest Cup here, we do start out with our 0 versus 0 at a 15% win ratio here. Only winning up against Magneton, Raichu, and Abomasnow. So, of course, we're seeing Magneton here again. No surprise there. Raichu is kind of an interesting one, but he is going to have pretty much some problem giving out damage to Camerupt, considering we do carry that ground typing. And then Abomasnow, it's going to have a really hard time going up against Ember to begin with, because it does have that super duper weakness to the fire typing. Next, we move on to the 1 versus 0, which is a 60% win ratio here, losing up against Swampert, Lapras, Quagsire, Tropius, Altaria, Whiscash, Lapras, yet again, and Lantern. So there are 2 different Laprases in the Tempest Cup meta list on pvpoke.com. That's just kind of detailing 2 different movesets there, but either way, we lose to both of them. And a lot of these other Pokemon are pretty self-explanatory. Swampert, definitely going to be able to hit you with a ton of water type damage with Hydro Cannon. Lantern also going to fall into that. Lapras, I'm pretty sure both movesets utilize Surf, either way you look at it. Tropius is going to be able to have Razor Leaf, which is already going to be very punishing. Quagsire going to have access to... I mean, what doesn't Quagsire have access to at this point? Altaria with Dragon Breath, you know, Whiscash being a mud boy himself. You know, most of those do make a little bit of sense there, so I can understand that. Next, we'll move into our 0 versus 1, which is a 10% win ratio here, only winning up against Magneton and Abomasnow. So like we said for the Boulder Cup, these are definitely going to be your 2 main shticks. These are going to be the ones that you want to go for on the opponent's team. If you see Magneton and Abomasnow, Camerupt actually may be doing really well there. In our 1v1 here, we do end with a 25% win ratio, winning up against Magneton, Abomasnow, Alolan Sandslash, Skarmory, and Raichu here. So kind of a nice little addition there. So Alolan Sandslash also going to fall in with Abomasnow having that super duper weakness to fire. Raichu here again just has a hard time outputting a lot of damage. And Skarmory. So like I said from the Boulder Cup, Skarmory, you know, can be beat, and Skarmory has 2 weaknesses, fire and electric. So I guess in situations that Camerupt can use fire effectively, it makes complete sense that we win. So averaging out across the Tempest Cup, we do have a 27.5%. So like I said, keep that in mind. Next, we move on to the Kingdom Cup here, which is in the 0 versus 0, a 17.6%, winning up against Melmetal, Probopass, and Bronzong. And all those make a fair bit of sense. They do all have some type of tie to the steel typing, so got that. In our 1 versus 0, we actually end up with a 76.5%, only losing up against Kingdra, Altaria, Lapras, and Empoleon. So back in the Kingdom Cup, if you remember, if you had access to some type of water move, it was kind of unique in the Kingdom Cup. So Kingdra, I mean, a lot of people prefer to use, I want to say it's Dragon Breath, but it does have access to water type charge moves. At least I'm assuming somebody out there is probably going to run some type of water move on Kingdra. It's not all dragon. I think it has an ice type move, right? But either way, Kingdra with water type moves is definitely going to be able to beat us here. Altaria, of course, with Dragon Breath, we've already talked about before. Lapras, we've already talked about, especially with Surf. And then Empoleon actually, usually, if I can remember correctly, utilizes Waterfall. So that makes a lot of sense there. Next, we move into our 0 versus 1, which is a 0%. So unfortunately, we have no direct good targets in the Kingdom Cup. But in our 1v1, we do bring it back with a 23.5% winning up against Torkoal, Melmetal, Bastiodon, and Lucario. And that's kind of interesting because back in the day when we were looking at Torkoal, Torkoal is actually seen as that Pokemon that was a fire type that could also beat the fire types in the Kingdom Cup. So that's actually really nice. We're actually an anti-fire, I guess. And then of course Melmetal, Bastiodon, and Lucario all have some type of ties to the steel typing, which, you know, kind of gives them a problem up against Camerupt. So averaging out all of those in the Kingdom Cup, we actually end with a 29.4, which oddly enough is better than the Tempest Cup, even though we had a 0% in there, but keep that in mind. Next, moving into Season 1 Regionals, we actually have a 0 versus 0, which is a 26.1% win ratio here up against Magneton, Melmetal, Fortress, Skuntank, Bronzong, and Alolan Muck. We all have wins there. So Magneton, yeah, Melmetal, Yeah, Fortress. Oh yeah. And then Bronzong all have some type of, steel typing associated with them. Fortress kind of the odd one out there. He does have a super duper weakness to that fire type damage, which actually makes a lot of sense there. Skuntank and Alolan Muck though. Being Dark Poison, of course, they only have one weakness, which is Ground, but we do actually have that covered with Earth Power, of course, so Earth Power actually ends up coming in really handy here. Next we move into the 1 vs 0, which is a 69.6%, losing up against Quagsire, Tropius, Altaria, Whiscash, Azumarill, and Medicham. So those are some pretty big names in the Season 1 regionals. Quagsire, Tropius, Altaria, all really top picks there. Azumarill and Medicham also one of the top picks. But Whiscash is kind of like, I mean, he's still a very good pick. He's just not widely considered like the best Mud Boy. I like Whiscash probably better than all the Mud Boys. Pre-Hydro Cannon probably, but I mean, all those are big names, which makes sense why they would actually have a lot to beat us with. All their movesets are very punishing towards Camerupt at this point. Next we move into our 0 vs 1, which is going to be an 8.7% win ratio, only winning up against Magneton and Fortress. So like we said in the past, that's basically going to be your targets in the cup. Magneton and Fortress all having weaknesses to the fire type, especially Fortress, makes a lot of sense. Last but not least, in our 1 vs 1 in Season 1 Regionals, we end up with a 21.7% win ratio here with Magneton, Fortress, Melmetal, Skarmory, and Bastiodon all being wins that we have there. So, and most of those actually make a fair bit of sense. They all do have some type of tie to the steel typing there. So as you can kind of see, especially in Season 1, it really shows that the steel typing is going to be your main shtick there. Averaging out in Season 1, we do have a 31.525%, and let's actually go over all of those. So starting out with our Boulder Cup, we had a 35.95, which was actually our best possible case scenario. Then we went to Season 1 with a 31.525. Then we actually go to the Kingdom Cup with a 29.4. And we end off in the Tempest Cup as our worst performing cup at a 27.5. So keeping up with the whole little rating system that I've been using all month, all of these are meh. Boulder Cup is borderline, like, yeah, but not like quite there. Tempest is also kind of borderline, like, no. But I mean, just comparing these to each other, like Boulder Cup, yeah, you have your best possible chance at doing well with Camerupt in the Boulder Cup. The Tempest Cup is kind of the one that I say don't do. There's a lot of other better options out there. The Tempest Cup is a no-go. In the Kingdom Cup and Season 1, it's kind of like up to you. Like, I feel like in those two cups, it's especially going to be apparent that if you don't build your team around Camerupt to protect the Camerupt and possibly use the Camerupt in a very punishing way in the end game, then you're just going to kind of have dead weight. So, kind of not a big fan of Camerupt in the Tempest Cup for sure. In Kingdom Cup and Season 1, it's kind of in the middle of the road. Boulder Cup, it's still okay to use, but I mean, it's definitely going to be an off-meta pick. You're going to probably surprise a couple of people, and I think that could be good for some surprise factor. But outside of that, if they really start to think about it, it's not that difficult to actually take out, because one of the Mud Boys is more than likely going to be on the opposing team, and once they figure that out, Camerupt is going to fall pretty quickly. So that is actually going to be it for Camerupt today, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. If I'm being honest, I was not expecting Camerupt to be voted this high, but I mean, hey, that's how it goes. At the moment, voting, of course, is still open. As you guys know, I am slowing down on deep dives, but I'm pretty sure Quagsire was in the top running for the next deep dive. So if you're interested in voting on what the next deep dive is on, definitely head down into the description, join that Discord, go into the voting channel, and there's a very simple vote command. You just type literally just !vote, type out the Pokemon you want, and it'll tally it up for you. So that is actually going to be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Always remember that I appreciate everyone that watches the videos. Okay, ending credits. Thank you guys so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you could do that, but if you don't, you could be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below about the video. I do highly appreciate you guys watching. If you guys want to support me in any way, there are several links down in the description for Patreon, joining the community here on YouTube, or even just directly PayPal if that's your thing. I greatly appreciate everyone's name that's on screen, as you guys have showed some sort of support outside of just viewing the videos, and I thank you guys. You don't understand from the bottom of my heart. So until our next video, guys, I will catch you then.